Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I want to say before I start, and I know I'm on the clock, it's really great to have you come into our office because I used to teach and normally it was the other way around. I had to report to you. I have a few questions. As the chairman earlier stated, you won't find a soul here that doesn't think our kids are our most valuable resource. I've got one getting out of school this year. Really appreciate the money you're throwing at Penn State. How much of that is she going to see back in tuition reductions?
Great.
So what is it, 20, 50 million? I mean, what am I looking at here? Because I've been writing checks left and right.
So I guess I'll share with you specifically. So first you're scaring me, being the father of an 11-year-old that still has a way to go before.
Oh, I got a 16-year-old right behind it, Secretary. Let's roll.
So when we look at Governor Wolf's higher ed proposal, as you know, he's put a call out to the higher ed institutions to freeze tuition. Specifically, when we're looking at what our proposal is looking at investing in our 14 community colleges, we're looking at a 7% increase, which brings them to about 98% of what they received in 10-11. The PA state system of higher ed, or the 14 universities in PASHI, we're looking at an 11% increase, which brings them at the 91% of what they received at that time. Penn State, we're looking at about a 23% increase, which brings them just over, the amount that they received in 10-11. Pitt, looking at an 11% increase, which brings them to that 90% of what they received in 10-11. Temple, looking at 11% increase, which brings them to 90% of what was received. And then Lincoln, looking at a 22% increase, which brings them just over what they received in 10-11. And of course, the governor hopes that over the course of the next few years to make those reductions whole. In relation to whether you'll see a reduction in tuition, he's been very deliberate in putting out that call to action and that ask that our systems of higher ed, look at tuition freezes, and that they, acknowledge the fact that he's looking at investing in higher ed.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Secretary. I'm not holding my breath, is the short answer. I have a question about the funding formula and how these drive out relief to districts. I have 6 school districts listed within this plan, 2 win, 4 lose, but what I'm really curious about is I have 2 of them that actually neighbor each other, whose funding coefficient is within 0.04% of each other, whose average household income is literally within $8 of each other. Yet one is getting relief while the other, in an equal and commensurate ratio, is losing the same amount of relief. How is this formula deploying is my question. That makes no sense. I mean, their funding formulas are the same. Their average household incomes are the same. The amount of kids are pretty close. One's up, one's down. What's up with that?
So if I can ask, because it's such a specific question, we can definitely do some research around it.
I'd love to talk. Well, what really makes this bounce is the one that's down is a new redistrict, and they actually have a nuclear waste dump. I can't imagine their property being worth more than the neighboring school district that loses compared to them. We'll get to that later. ADM versus ADA. Average daily membership versus average daily attendance. Mm-hmm. Again, nobody in the room here wants to see our kids cheated, but we can't cheat them. Well, let me rephrase that. We can't really do them well unless they're there.
Yes.
So in your funding formula, I noticed the city of the first class, which gets picked on an awful lot, has a substantial increase. If you deployed average daily attendance versus average daily membership, would that change your funding drive-outs? How many kids actually show up to enjoy this new education focus?
So we've not run that. So, I mean, I guess in terms of practicality, it would dictate when do you take the ADA. As opposed to right now, we have, usually most schools engage in that October count, which you probably remember as, as a teacher where you pull the numbers together. But I'm sure there might be some difference within, but it's not how we run the formula.
I think that's a very, very telling number. I mean, like I said, there isn't anybody here that minds paying for the kids that are there. It's the ones that aren't we object to. I know I'm running close on time, Chairman, so I have a few questions I'd like to ask you later, if that's all right, but I'll close with this. We keep hearing about this giant cut. I've been on approps for 6 years. I was here for that. Now, we ran some numbers. That cut, maybe it's Common Core math, I don't know, I haven't studied that yet, but the last year, the previous administration, total drive out, including 1.042563 billion in federal stimulus, was 9.937 billion. And lo and behold, didn't our dear departed last governor drive out 10.469 billion? Mr. Gursky taught me a long time ago, when you subtract a higher value from a lesser number, you get a negative product. That's not what's happening here. Where's the cut?
So I've been purposeful in saying reductions, but so when we look at specifically, and I think that's what's different about this budget, and which is why, as I share the governor's proposed budget to invest $1 billion in the classroom, it's where that difference is. I can't argue based on the math that when the legislature year after year approved the budget, the cost continued to increase.
Sure.
You were investing. You're approving greater expenditure. What I'm sharing, and when we're looking at the reductions over the past few years, it's looking specifically and having, been at a school district for 6.5 years and approving 6 budgets, each of which had anywhere between a $9 million and a $7.5 million structural deficit as a result of everything that you know is involved in that budget. It doesn't change the fact that we were investing more money in our school district, not investing, we were spending more money in our school district each year after year. The budget continued to go up, but we were spending less in our classrooms year after year because that structural deficit was attributed to cost that had no impact to teaching and learning. And as a teacher, you know that, you experience that. So when those costs are attributed to issues that don't impact programs or resources or materials or supplies, what we're proposing as part of this budget, and the full $1 billion goes directly into services that support classroom and instruction. So we've definitely not been saying you cut money. It's a reduction of programs and services, and and how we support kids.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Representative.